Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our discussion one-on-one with Ms. Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, the leader of Belarus opposition. You're not a newcomer to Bled. It's your third time, I believe so, in Bled. How are you doing today?
I'm so glad that we are invited here to be the voice of Belarusian people who are fighting for democracy, that Belarusian topic is in focus on Bled Forum, and it means that release of our country, freedom of our country is important for Europeans.
Thank you. We will have to be short and precise. The organizer asked us to finish 5 minutes earlier. But still, we will try to squeeze in 1 or 2 questions. So later on, I will ask if some of you will have a question, so please be prepared. I would like to, Ms. Tsikhanouskaya, I would like to start with the topic that currently we are marking 5 years since the presidential elections that you took part in and fought with Lukashenko. We saw mass protests across Belarus that lasted several months. What, in your opinion, what's been the opposition's biggest win and at the same time the biggest failure maybe of this time?
So first of all, let's remind to the audience and to the world actually that Lukashenko lost elections 2020 because sometimes people are forgetting about this. And for these 5 years, we managed to build alternative institutions of power in exile. You know that repressions are endless in Belarus. People are detained every day. We live like, people in Belarus live like in Stalin times, when you can be detained like for anything. It's like walking on a glass at the moment. But we managed to stay united as a democratic movement. We managed to formalize relationship with democratic world, with the European Union, European Parliament, the USA, Canada, UK, and we are people of Belarus. We are perceived as real representatives of our country. Lukashenko is not recognized as legitimate ruler in Belarus. He's kept in political, economic isolation for all the crimes this regime committed. The biggest failure is, of course, that we haven't reached our goal, release of all political prisoners and holding free and fair elections in Belarus. But nobody promised that it will be easy path for us, but I think that we are going through all these difficulties with dignity.
Thank you. We will talk more, of course, about the situation in Belarus and also the political prisoners. Before that, I would like to ask you, since you mentioned, of course, the exile that you've been now for 5 years, was there any alternative for you? I'm asking both personally as well as professional as a politician that took part in the elections. Any alternative to exile?
You mean if I stay in Belarus or?
Yeah.
Look, everybody who is opposing the regime can end in jail. And I remember how in 2020, after fraudulent elections, I was forced to leave the country. I was threatened, of course, if you stay in the country, you will be in jail, your children will be in the orphanage. I want to remind that my husband was in jail at that moment, or you have to flee. And the regime thought that while kicking me out of the country, I will stop my fight and, they will be winners. But I didn't have alternative to fight or not to fight. I promised to Belarusian people that I will be with them until we achieve our aims. So I'm doing everything possible we can be not in the country.
I've been following, of course, your activity and activity of the Belarusian opposition of your team. What kind of sense and voice are you giving to the Belarus diaspora? Because the Belarus diaspora abroad is growing constantly from the 2020. And here especially, maybe it will be interesting for the audience to understand better what is the idea about the second passport for Belarusian and how far is this project?
I have to say that in 2020 it was a huge shift in the mindset of Belarusians happened. Of course, our diaspora who lived abroad, it was like Belarusians living abroad. But 2020 united all of them into institutions. We have diasporas that are like holding united activities. We have even people's embassies, how we call them. It's institutions that are providing some service to Belarusians abroad, who are advocating for Belarusian case in other countries. And they are perceived, on the rather high level in the countries they live in. For example, today with me, people's ambassador who serves here in Slovenia, and she's communicating to Minister of Foreign Affairs just regarding documents, regarding position of Belarusians here. And there are a lot of work, because repressions of regime now taking this transnational character, because people are deprived, for example, the possibility to renew their documents, renew their passports. If you live abroad, if you're active, you cannot return to Belarus because you will be detained and your passport is expired. What should we do in this case? Of course, we are trying to solve the issues domestically. In each country, we have foreigners' passports. In Germany, for example, there is request, to migration services to accept Belarusian expired passports as valid, but we understand we have to solve this issue systematically. So that's why we are working on a project Passport of New Belarus. We started to issue Belarusian passports ourselves. Of course, it's we haven't achieved political recognition of this passport. I mean, practical recognition, because it has been a solution of all European Union, but people already using it for identification. And we explained to our partners that very soon, at least 500,000 people will be stateless, and we have to deal somehow with their documents. We can push people inside the country, for them to imprison. So let's unite, and think how we can solve this problem.
And what is the response of the authorities from the member states?
So it's a difficult issue. It's unprecedented project, because nobody, in modern Europe, have never done things like this, but we are looking for solution, and we are explaining, the profits, from this project, that it also very important symbolic message to the regime that you don't own people, just, tying them with this restriction on passport, you cannot influence people. So I hope that sooner or later, this passport will be recognized as a real document by authorities. But and of course, I'm asking to advocate for this. It really needs boldness and political decisiveness.
According to the different sources, roughly around 50,000 or 60,000 Belarusians were imprisoned or detained in the last 4 to 5 years. Many lost their lives. And at least perception is that the state and Lukashenko regime tries to control also personal lives and the civil lives in terms of very close to the totalitarian regimes have done in the past. So my provocative question is, Belarus under current regime more closer to North Korea or Europe?
Regime is trying to make our country North Korea. There are so many bans and restrictions for Belarusian people, but our task to get Belarusians out of this isolation. Lukashenko tries to isolate people for them not to have possibility and to travel, to see what democracy is, to see what freedom is. Lukashenko pushes our nation closer to Russia. It was his constant policy, but Belarusians are Europeans, inside. We want to return to European family of countries. We want to enjoy the same freedoms and values that you are enjoying, and we are paying with our freedom, with the sufferings for this. And this approach, pro-European approach, contradicts to Lukashenko values. He wants to fix control over Belarusian people, but times are changing. Belarusians don't want to live in this Lukashenko's jail. We want to choose our future by ourselves, and our future is in Europe.
Many journalists in Slovenia are often asking me why there are not any more protests in Belarus, and they try to persuade, or they try to make an argument that probably the repression already broke the resistance. Would you agree with this?
It's a pity that maybe people who don't remember dictatorship in their countries, who maybe didn't live during Milosevic time, for example, they don't realize how it's difficult to uprise visibly in a dictatorship. For any anti-regime message, for supporting Ukrainians, for donating to Ukrainian army, or even for buying Christmas present to the child of political prisoner is crime in Belarus, and you can be sentenced to 10, 15, 25 years in jail for this. So in democratic countries, it's easy to say you can protest if you're not agree. In dictatorship, you cannot. You just choose in between spending 20 years in jail or keeping yourself in safe mode. Mm-hmm. This is what Belarusians are going through now. It doesn't mean that Belarusian society agreed to Lukashenko's rules. The spirit is alive, and people are preparing for the next momentum, for the next window of opportunity. We are, as I said, we are united. We are coordinating our actions with Belarusians inside the country. People hold, underground protest or silent protest. They are leaking us information. They are our intelligence on the ground. Even people, from Lukashenko's circle, they also providing us information how, for example, sanctions are circumvented, or what enterprises now producing military stuff for Russian war. It's very sensitive issues. They can be detained for leaking of the information, but they want changes together with us. So that's why they're serving to our common goal.
At the same time, we have to keep in mind constantly that Lukashenko is in power for more than 30 years already. Is there any risk that a few generations of Belarusians will no longer know or strive for democracy, especially if the regime will survive another 5 years and another 5 years?
I think that changes that happened in Belarusian nation in 2020 are irreversible. It's impossible when you were about to get this freedom, to return to Lukashenko's set of mind. People now, have possibility to see how other countries live, especially, post-Soviet Union countries. We understand that Belarusians are hardworking, wonderful, disciplined people, and if we get such opportunity to develop economically, valuably, we will be able to achieve the results very, very fast. And people understand that Lukashenko's policy is the dead end for our country, for independence of Belarus. He's pushing us, to Russia, making us serve to Russian interests, not to Belarusian one. And Belarusians realized ourselves as nation, that we are not the same as the Russians, especially after the war in Ukraine started.
This is an excellent start for my next question, and this is, we cannot talk about, or we cannot miss the context, and this is the war in Ukraine, and we know that Lukashenko allowed Russian troops to attack Ukraine also from the Belarus territory. But my question goes into why the Ukrainian leadership and President Zelensky was reluctant, at least it seems so, to establish some kind of connection and cooperation with you and Belarusian opposition generally.
We have to understand that Ukraine is in extremely difficult situation when Russia is attacking from both sides, from Belarus and Russian. And when the invasion from Belarus stopped, the Ukrainian administration, they didn't want to open this second front. They didn't want to provoke maybe Lukashenko. That's why we are holding contacts. We are in communication with the President Trump administration, with Parliament, with the Ukrainians. But I really don't want to show off. My motto here is not to harm Ukrainians to win the battle. So when the moment comes, believe me, there will be meetings. There will be more visibility of our relationship, but not now.
And what about Russian opposition in exile? It's also growing?
Look, we, of course, encourage Russian opposition to continue their fight. It's their fight, but we have different contexts, our countries. And time to time, we are meeting to Russian opposition delegates. We might share our experience, how we organized, or what maybe new methods to counter propaganda. But we maybe have different aims. Our society is consolidated against Lukashenko and for European perspectives. Russian opposition is more dispersed. They're learning from us how we managed to achieve such visibility and such formalization of relationship with the other countries. We have clear structures. We have president-elect. We have united transitional cabinet as proto-government. So we are very well structurized. So, but I think that even Russian opposition, they have to say clearly that after changes come to Russia, there will be no imperialistic ambitions in new Russia, because it's a very important question for us.
And until now, they didn't say so.
Not so clearly as we want to hear.
Yes, and probably the Ukrainians as well. In June this year, very important things happened also for your life, for your family. Together with the other 13 political prisoners, your husband, Sergei, was released after 5 years in prison. It's a little bit of a personal question. How did you manage to process, of course, joy and relief after his being released? Well, at the same time, we know that more than 1,200 political prisoners are still in jail and that many more are coming.
Of course, the release of my husband was, first of all, unexpected for me. So as he is one of the biggest enemies of Lukashenko regime, I was sure that he will be among the last who will be released, but things as they are. And sometimes I even feel guilty that my husband is free, and at least 1,300 families are in the position of waiting for their relatives, for their beloved. Of course, it's my personal joy, but you cannot enjoy this happiness in full while you know that mothers are waiting for their sons, wives are waiting for their husbands, and even children waiting for both of their parents. So I'm so glad that my husband, even being so exhausted physically and morally, being kept 5 years in isolation, he wasn't broken. He didn't sign the letter of pardon, to Lukashenko, and he immediately jumped into our fight. He stood with me. He is not competing with me. We just complementing each other. He now he's maybe one of the biggest advocates for release of political prisoners, because he just experienced all that our comrades are experiencing now in prisons.
What will Lukashenko demand for this move? Because in the past we saw similar moves, and the new credit lines followed, or the recognition, or losing the sanctions in the past. Will we see something similar today?
So for the release of that group of people, among which my husband was, Lukashenko didn't get anything except public picture with the General Kelek, who went to Belarus to release people.
So General Kelek, pardon, should meet him more often.
Look, I'm really grateful and appreciate the efforts of Trump's administration on the release of political prisoners. But this release will not be, shouldn't, fooled into lifting sanctions or relaxing pressure on Lukashenko in exchange of this gesture. Changes in Belarus have to be systematic and irreversible, and these are also our request to Americans. Here I want to underline that the release of this group people and previous and the future ones is the joint efforts of European Union and the USA. Without strong and principled support of our European partners, of your policy of non-recognition and sanction policy, these releases might never have happened. Because Lukashenko realizes that Europeans are not giving up; they're standing strong on their positions, and are not going to appease Lukashenko or forgive him.
I will ask a question, and after that you will have the opportunity. So be ready if there is any interest. But my question would be a very simple one and quite short: are we, as Europeans, as a European Union, doing enough to support democratization of Belarus?
Europeans are doing a lot to support Belarusians and Ukrainians, but I think that much more can be done. For example, let's take sanctions. Sanctions are rather powerful at the moment, but they left so many loopholes, that dictators can, using each other, can circumvent the sanctions. So we have to close the loopholes. Or, our strategy is to put pressure on Lukashenko regime, but on the other hand, to strengthen people, strengthen agents of democratic forces. And now we are people without state. We don't have possibility, to support ourselves, and we need European assistance, first of all, to our media to counter propaganda, assistance to our human rights defenders who are taking care of repressed, to our civil society. To preserve our national identity. So I'm, of course, asking, encouraging the European Union, and Marta Kos is very favorable, of this idea to continue support and increase support to Belarusian democratic movement, not just for us to survive, but to win this fight.
Thank you. Is there any question? Yeah, we see a hand. The lady in the second row. Please introduce yourself.
So, first of all, I want to express gratitude to the soldiers from Belarus who are also fighting on Ukrainian front lines. There are many of them, and we are feeling the support very much. But my question is about the regime and about the future. The regime is, of course, not only Lukashenko, and there are many people who are working with him, who are working and supporting him actively. So there is, if we want to have a really democratic future Belarus, I believe that the justice and the accountability is very important, and it's not only words. So my question is, what is your vision of justice for the Belarus, for your people, of course, and for also Ukrainians? What is your vision of work with those people who were working with regime, who were supporting Russia, who were doing all of these atrocities? So thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to convey my deepest respect to all the Ukrainians who are fighting in Ukraine, and also Belarusian military or Belarusian volunteers who are fighting shoulder to shoulder with the brave Ukrainian people. You are fighting not only for yourself, but also for Belarus and for the whole Europe. And of course, when we talk about changing of the regime, it's not about changing one person, one Lukashenko. It's about changing the whole system. We want to bring justice and freedom to Belarusian nation. And of course, we are taking care about accountability processes. Since 2020, we are collecting evidences of Lukashenko's crimes. We have launched the International Accountability Platform that is supported by many European countries, and we are preparing for this accountability process. Moreover, recently Lithuania, one of the biggest allies, they sent referral to International Criminal Court to start investigation of crimes of Lukashenko and his cronies. And our message to Belarusian authorities is that all those people who haven't participated in heavy crimes, they will continue to work for future Belarus. But those who committed these crimes, of course, they will have to be brought to accountability inside the country. We have to restore justice. No one death of activists, no one wasted lives of political prisoners shouldn't be left unpunished.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tsikhanouskaya. Sorry, I have many more questions for you, and probably there are many more questions from the audience. But the organizer saying, Denis, we have to stop. So thank you very much, and looking forward to meeting you next year.
Thank you.
Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya.